The Production of Space and Planetary Computation. By David Capener. Presented by Robotic Text-to-Speech Robot. Animation. Glitched Facebook advertisement by artist and discount Instagram lickass Alan Butler. The cloud is a marketing sleight of hand. It is a dirty, thirsty object. From the mining of tantalum. Used in the manufacturing of many portable digital devices. Cut from the geological strata of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the profits helped fund the deadliest civil war since World War II, to cavernous so-called fulfillment centers where an invisible workforce are called into action by our by-now one-click interface commands, moving robotically down seemingly endless aisles of algorithmically organized Z products arranged according to purchase preferences, the like of which we never knew we had. Someone who buys a read a book is likely to go on and buy cat food, a computer monitor, underwear, a hammer and a multi-pack of baked beans. A strange architecture of consumer desires, the production of abstract space. Products primed and ready to move across a more than military-grade infrastructure to arrive on our doormats as an innocent-looking cardboard box. Oh, to be an archaeologist of the future, unearthing the 21st century's vast repository of disembodied voices. Siri. Do you love me?
Well, I enjoy spending quality time with you. You have my utmost admiration.
All downloading is an uploading of the Earth's resources. To say that there is an Internet of Things presupposes that there is an Internet of not things. There is not. The virtual is always real, material, infrastructural, architectural, present in the here and now. These infrastructures are part of complex entangled infrastructural ecology, what Benjamin Bratton calls the stack, an accidental megastructure. A vertical geography moving from the raw resources of the Earth to the light-speed interactions of the cloud, drawing in users, human and non-human, and acting upon the terrains of our cities. Just as Marx understood the division of labor as intrinsically linked to the history of the means of production, so these new means of barely perceptible light-speed production and the strange architectures that facilitate them are radically deterritorializing and territorializing new urban terrains. The digital turn is inherently material, inherently spatial. It is an architectural problem. The following paper seeks to open up a conversation about what conceptual toolkit we as architects should employ to help us understand and act in this strange age. I contend that one possible avenue to explore is the notion of perceived space in Henri Lefebvre's triadic of spatial production, and ask what continued relevance it might have as a framework for understanding spatial production in our age of digital technology. My argument will focus on Henri Lefebvre's thesis in the production of space that the shift from one mode of production to another must entail the production of a new space. Following Lefebvre, I understand perception as a key process in the production of space, what he called perceived space. Put simply, modes of production structure perception. The shift from one mode of production to another is not simply a historical event, it is an ontological event that creates phenomenological revolutions. It is a phenomenological revolution because technology structures perception. Technology makes our perception of the world possible. Technology is and has always been our only way of accessing a world of phenomenon. Not only is it a way of accessing the world, but also technology itself generates phenomenality. The digital revolution is therefore not just a historical event in the history of technology, it is a philosophical and spatial event that affects our phenomenological experience of the world. What is this guy on? I've no idea what this is about. Anyway, that technology structures perception and produces space is, literally, as old as space-time itself. Neither are possible apart from the technologies that produce them. Wolfgang Schivelbusk shows how perception was radically transformed by technologies of industrialization, in particular, the rail network. He writes that the space between points, what he calls traditional travel space, is destroyed as localities previously inaccessible or accessible only by means of cart and horse collide and move into each other's vicinity, losing their old sense of local identity, which used to be determined by the spaces between them. The isolation of localities, which was created by spatial distance, was the very essence of their identity. their self-assured and complacent individuality, this spatial collision radically changed the subject's perception of space, time, speed, geographies and the other. Technology structures perception and produces new kinds of space. Before I give a very brief overview of the production of space, it is important to explain something of Lefebvre's often elusive and difficult methodology. Throughout large portions of the production of space, Lefebvre lays out what shifts in the mode of production look like. But he doesn't tell us in great detail how these shifts occur and what they actually do to the mechanics of spatial production. In the typically Lefebvrean titled final chapter of the production of space, Openings and Conclusions, he writes, "This book has been informed from beginning to end by a project, though this may at times have been discernible only by reading between the lines. This is not a throwaway comment." The invitation to read between the lines is central to the methodological premise of Lefebvre's project. Central to this is his dialectical concept of concrete abstraction. The student of everyday life must create concepts. The abstract, but these must always be comprehended in the concrete, material reality of everyday life. Concepts must always be critiqued through practice, and practice through concepts. To read between the lines is, I believe, an invitation to continue his project in the same manner that he did by constantly advancing his concepts and interaction with social reality. This paper is one such attempt. I want to propose that that which is between the lines in Lefebvre can be productively explored by using the work of philosopher Bernard Stiegler. This is not an attempt to read Lefebvre alongside Stiegler and draw parallels between their work. It is, I believe, a way to be true to Lefebvre's methodology, a way of illuminating important concepts in the production of space that I believe can have continued relevance in our digital age. This is a Lefebvrean critique of Lefebvre. The production of space. Lefebvre's understanding of space is non-Euclidean. Space is not an object, it is in fact neither subject or object, nor is it a container. Space does not exist, it does not pre-exist that which populates it. The production of space is a complex process that via a three-dimensional dialectical process oscillates between epistemological, phenomenological, materialist and semiotic philosophical registers. The triadic. Lefebvre articulates his three-dimensional triadic in two different ways, the first semiotic, the second phenomenological. Firstly, space is produced through the process of spatial practice, representations of space, and spaces of representation. Secondly, space is produced through the process of the perceived, conceived, and lived. Spatial practice perceived space is the network of infrastructures produced by the current means of production that form the spatial practice of everyday life. Representations of space conceived space is conceptualized space, the space of scientists, planners, architects etc. Representational space lived space is the space that we passively experience as we go about our lives, how space is mediated to us as an act of perception and imagination. To summarize, shifts in the modes of production produce new kinds of space that produce subjects in space which produce space. But what is it that Lefebvre means by production? How do modes of production shift? What are the consequences of these shifts for the perceiving subject? Beginning with Lefebvre's understanding of production, these are the questions that I will now turn to. For Lefebvre, production does not just mean the production of objects, goods and products. His understanding of production is much broader, encompassing all that constitutes society. The production of oeuvre. The production of knowledge. Of institutions. Production is not a totality but a network of relations that should be considered in as that which enables collective life to live, and thus to be perpetuated. Institutions, values, activities like medicine, teaching, art, etc. It is important here to note that, as Eldon notes, T. Here is not the material production of objects and the mental production of ideas. Our mental interaction with the world produces the world that we encounter. As much as the physical objects we create, production structures perception and produces space. Thus, as the mode of production shifts, material, epistemological, phenomenological and semiotic changes take place which in turn produce new kinds of space. Shifts in the mode of production are not merely historical shifts but are ontological shifts. However, Lefebvre does not explore in detail the mechanics of the shifts between modes of production, what those shifts do, and how those shifts cause ontological changes in the triadic of spatial production. This is where I propose that reading Lefebvre's production as what Stiegler calls epoch is a possible avenue towards creating a conceptual framework for understanding the spatio-temporal complexities of our digital age. I am very confused, but I will carry on regardless. Stiegler. To understand what it is Stiegler means by epoch, I will first need to introduce a very brief overview of Stiegler's philosophical framework in which his concept of epoch is situated. In Volume 1 of Techniques and Time, Stiegler introduces a foundational concept. Technics is the condition of culture. This has been forgotten by Western philosophy. A schism has been created between Techn and episteme. There is a co-original status of humanity and technology. The human does not just invent technology, but the human is itself an invention of technology. Technology is not simply a means to an end. Secondly, borrowing from Husserl, Stiegler introduces the concept of tertiary retention, memory devices that are external to the human body. Using the example of this talk, primary retention can be understood as the perception of what is happening immediately around us as I utter each word. To make sense of this talk, we must be able to retain and remember the words that I am immediately hearing. Secondary retention is the recalling of past memory. For example, the words that I spoke 10 minutes ago, or a place where you have heard these ideas before. However, something different happens when the words that I speak are recorded and I listen to it on YouTube after the conference. This Stiegler calls tertiary retention. Tertiary retention is a third kind of memory that is exterior to the human body. Stiegler's account differs from that of Husserl's. Rather than primary retention being constitutive of secondary retention, it is tertiary retention that is constitutive of primary retention. In short, technology structures perception. Using the example of listening to a pre-recorded melody, Stiegler writes, "You only have to listen twice to the same melody to see that between the two auditions. Consciousness never hears the same thing, because the listening of the second audition has been affected by the first." Technics is the condition of what Stiegler calls epoch, which again he borrows from Husserl. In short, for Stiegler, an epoch, which carries a sense of what Lefebvre means by production, is understood as the ideas, institutions and social norms that form a particular period of time. But Stiegler goes further than Husserl's use of epoch as the phenomenological method of suspending one's beliefs in order to access the essence of phenomenon. As our access to the word is always already technically mediated, any suspension of the world can only take place through changes in the systems of retention by and through which we access the world. Stiegler takes Husserl's epoch and, by understanding the formation of new tertiary memory supports as a disruption within the existing technological system, he makes epoch the condition of history itself. For in Lefebvrean language we could say the condition of everyday life itself. Epoch refers to the suspension of established behaviors by some form of disruption by technical innovation which intervenes within an established epoch. This disruption creates an interruption of belief and knowledge. A break-in the knowledge that had hitherto constituted the previous era. Which is also what, in historical terms, an epoch is constituted and can be understood through what Stiegler calls general organology, the biological, social and technical. As epochal adjustments and disadjustments of these organs take place, new epochs emerge. We can now return to Lefebvre and the central thesis of this paper. Shifts from one mode of production to another must entail the production of a new space. In summary, production for Lefebvre is more than the production of objects. Production is closer to what Stiegler calls an epoch, comprising and formed by biological, social and technical organs. It is the suspension of an epoch that is the precondition of a shift from one mode of production to another. Lefebvre gives little sustained analysis of the actual mechanics of this shift. For Stiegler, the process by which this shift occurs is called a double epochal redoubling, where a new stage of technological development interrupts and suspends social rules and behaviors and thereby destroys social systems. Of particular interest here is that central to the suspension of an epoch are new technologies that form new tertiary retentions, forming new ways of perceiving space-time, which brings us back to the second central thesis of this paper. Perception produces space, and shifts in the mode of production produce new forms of perception. That tertiary retention is spatial is of great significance for, according to Stiegler, it opens it to every possible manipulation. This is possible because of the speed at which digital tertiary retention devices operate. The access they have to our immediate experiences of space and time, and their ability to record and remember events in real time, radically changing the processes of retention. A short-circuiting takes place. The selection process operating between secondary retentions, pass memory, and tertiary retentions, exteriorized memory, is short-circuited. These moments coincide in a single spatio-temporal reality such that all delay, all distance between them is eliminated. Unlike listening to a record on the tertiary memory device of a turntable, digital technologies operate on a global collective scale with the ability to create and reproduce information in real time at light speed, or what Stiegler calls light time. Spatio-temporal distance between those recalling and what is recalled is collapsed. This has implications for perceived space, whereby experience is overcoded with chrono-referential and geo-referential data, specified by technical infrastructures. As such, new layers of meaning, or in Lefebvrean terms, representations, are applied to space. Digital tertiary retention of this kind of scale is a global spatialization of memory that allows for what Stiegler calls a quasi-materialization of consciousness, at the risk of oversimplification. But at the same time a reminder of the material spatio-temporal reality of digital tertiary retentions. It is worth noting that this is a spatial matter, and as such should concern architects and the like. The question is, what conceptual tools will be developed to help us understand and act in the spatio-temporal changes of planetary computation?